Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at a figure who didn't just play football, actually scratch that, he completely re-engineered it from the ground up. Johan Cruyff wasn't merely a gifted athlete, he was a genuine spatial genius. He would look at a grass pitch and see, well, geometry, angles, and just endless possibilities.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Cruyff famously dropped this incredible piece of paradoxical wisdom. Playing football is very simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing there is, right? That sets the stage for everything we're going to unpack today. He genuinely believed that the ultimate sophistication in sports was achieving this absolute flowing simplicity, which is, incredibly difficult to actually execute in practice.
Which brings us to the real hook of our explainer today. How exactly did a skinny, chain-smoking kid from Amsterdam completely redesign the geometry of the world's most popular sport? Cruyff grew up in a working-class concrete village called Betondorp, literally 5 minutes from the Ajax stadium. He was a rebellious kid shaped by early tragedy when his father passed away, leaving his mother to work cleaning lockers at the very club that would later make him famous. So how does a kid with that background evolve into the ultimate football philosopher?
Part 1. The Total Footballer. A mind for the game.
When Cruyff first joined the Ajax Youth Academy, he was pretty severely physically underdeveloped, but he overcompensated with his mind. He figured out super early on that if you literally cannot outmuscle your opponent, you just have to outthink them. And this realization birthed the concept of total football. Think of it as a fluid, tactical system where players are seamlessly interchanging positions, completely prioritizing space manipulation and positional awareness over fixed, rigid roles. It's like a piece of living, breathing architecture. And under the strict discipline of coach Rinus Michels, Cruyff was basically the on-field conductor for this entire vision. If a defender bombed forward, Cruyff would flawlessly orchestrate a midfielder dropping back to cover. It was all about seeing the entire pitch as one completely connected system.
Now, what's really interesting here is the number 14. Back in 1970, coming back from an injury, Cruyff casually picked up the number 14 jersey instead of his usual number 9. You have to remember, in those days, starting players strictly wore numbers 1 through 11, no exceptions. So breaking that mold by wearing 14, that was a massive visual declaration. It signaled his identity as a relentless disruptor who simply wasn't bound by the traditional rules of the game.
Part 2. The Ajax Revolution, or as I like to call it, controlled chaos.
This was an era of controlled chaos, where Cruyff and Ajax weaponized the geometry of the pitch to absolutely dominate European football. Back in the 1960s, global football was completely dominated by the Italian catenaccio, this incredibly rigid, purely defensive style based on fixed man marking. Total football completely shattered that paradigm. It was all fluidity and attacking space. In the 1972 European Cup final, Ajax conceptually and pretty much literally killed the defensive catenaccio. Cruyff single-handedly dismantled Inter Milan, scoring both goals in a 2-0 triumph that permanently shifted the balance of power in global football.
But how did they actually pull it off? Through a tactic they called hunting. Cruyff's spatial genius dictated that when his team had the ball, they maximized the playing area by stretching out to the wings. But the second possession was lost, they violently shrank the pitch. They pushed their defensive line way up, deployed the offside trap, and literally hunted the opponent to suffocate their space. This breathtaking manipulation of area and time, it's the direct ancestor of the high-pressing systems we see all the top teams running on TV today.
Moving on to Part 3, Conquering Barcelona, the Catalan savior.
By 1973, it was time for a new challenge in Spain. Now, moving to Francoist Spain carried massive political weight at the time, but Cruyff himself was largely apolitical. He was driven purely by footballing ambition and, let's be honest, a staggering world record 6 million guilder transfer fee. And the crazy thing, Cruyff actually orchestrated this move himself by brazenly defying his former club. Ajax had tried to sell him to Real Madrid against his will, so what does Cruyff do? He threatens to just stop playing altogether unless they let him go to Barcelona. He completely forced the issue and, well, he got his way. And this brilliantly illustrates his transformative impact. In his very first season, he delivered Barcelona their first La Liga title in 14 years. He even masterminded the stunning 5-0 away win against their fiercest rivals, Real Madrid, bringing his dynamic positional play straight to Spain. For the fans, his arrival wasn't just about football. It sparked a profound cultural revival. He gave the club a winning identity they hadn't felt in over a decade. Cruyff took that exact same dominance right into the 1974 World Cup. He systematically dismantled giants like Argentina and Brazil, introducing the world to the famous Cruyff turn, this unbelievable spatial trick that left defenders entirely bewildered. Now, the tournament did end in a deeply traumatic 1-2 final loss to host nation West Germany, but Cruyff always framed this as a moral victory. The world was completely enthralled by their artistry. They might have lost the cup, but they absolutely won the hearts of the global audience.
Let's jump to part 4, building the dream team, the managerial mastermind.
You see, Cruyff just couldn't stay away from the game. In 1988, he returned to a crisis-stricken Barcelona as manager and immediately started implementing these radical tactical disruptions. He made rondos, those quick one-touch passing circles, the absolute core of daily training. But most remarkably, he completely overturned the youth academy's rules. Before him, they literally used wrist x-rays to weed out kids who supposedly wouldn't grow tall enough. Crazy, right? Cruyff ignored height entirely. He valued intelligence, technique, and a low center of gravity over brute size. And that directly led to the discovery of physically fragile but brilliantly minded talents like Pep Guardiola.
So the crucial point is how he restructured the team's geometry into a 3-4-3 formation to make all of this work. Step 1, push one central defender forward into the midfield. Step 2, this allows the team to form continuous natural passing triangles, ensuring the player with the ball always has at least 2 options. Step 3, when defending, the team smoothly reverts back to a 4-3-3. He essentially solved the puzzle of achieving numerical superiority just by shifting their starting coordinates.
All of this incredible innovation built up to the 1992 European Cup final. Right before the team walked out onto the pitch at Wembley Stadium, Cruyff didn't give some screaming, intense motivational speech. Instead, he gave them this famously relaxed final instruction: "Salve y disfrutad," go out and enjoy it. And they played with exactly that freedom, securing a historic 1-0 win in extra time. It was the foundational victory that officially birthed the legend of the Dream Team.
Finally, part 5, the Cruyff legacy, the eternal philosophy.
Let's trace this history and see how this builds over time. Cruyff's tenure as a manager eventually ended, but his school of thought, Cruyffismo, became absolute dogma for the clubs he touched. He planted the seed in 1988, harvested the ultimate prize in 1992, and as an advisor working behind the scenes, he ensured his disciples inherited the game. In 2003, Frank Rijkaard is hired to revive Cruyff's 4-3-3. Then, in 2008, his prized student Pep Guardiola takes the reins, evolving Cruyff's principles into the incredible tiki-taka dominance that would go on to conquer the world.
The reverence his students have for him is just profound. Guardiola put it perfectly when he said, "Before he came, we didn't have a cathedral of football in Barcelona. It was built by one man, by Johan Cruyff, stone by stone." That is a striking architectural metaphor from his greatest student, and it firmly cements Cruyff as the undisputed founding father of the modern game's aesthetic.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Think about all the things we've discussed today. The fluid manipulation of spaces, the passing triangles, the youth academies finally valuing brains over brawn. What would modern football even look like today if Johan Cruyff had never stepped onto the pitch? It's a massive question that truly secures his legendary status, and one that encourages all of us to look a little deeper at the geometry of the games we watch today. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.